Ladies and gentlemen, I would kindly invite the Prime Minister of the Republic of Croatia, Mr. Andrej Plenković, to give his address and open the conference. Prime Minister.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you for this kind invitation to the second Dubrovnik conference of this nature, co-organized by the Croatian National Bank and the International Monetary Fund. I would like to especially greet Deputy Managing Director of the IFM, Mr. Tao Zhang, for being here with us, and also give our best regards and congratulations to Christine Lagarde for her new job as the President of the ECB, which will be very important for Croatia in the years to come. Dear Governor Vujicic, dear Minister Maric, dear Prefect of Dubrovnik-Neretva County, Mr. Dobroslavic, dear Member of Parliament, Sanja Putica, dear Member of the European Parliament, Dubravka Šuica, Ministers, Governors, policymakers, officials, I'm very pleased to welcome you on behalf of the Croatian government in Dubrovnik. I understand you had a very charming introduction to today's conference yesterday evening in an ambience which is always enchanting for everyone that comes to Croatia and to Dubrovnik. I believe that this second Dubrovnik conference can be seen as an initiative and an incentive for further strengthening of international cooperation to tackle challenges in achieving stronger, more sustainable, balanced and more inclusive growth. The investment in human capital is an important topic not only for this part of Europe but for the European Union as a whole. This topic is especially important for Croatia. As the youngest member of the European Union, we are at a point when advantages of membership start to leave their positive mark. At the same time, while our citizens enjoy the benefits of the freedom of movement as one of the fundamental principles and liberties within the EU, Croatia is facing serious demographic challenges. And exactly for that reason, today's conference will be very important for us. In order for us to continue the economic recovery, we expect to hear what policies we can use to identify and deal with challenges and risks in the labor market. Let me start by highlighting some of our recent macroeconomic and structural achievements. Those are very important for the process of Croatia's convergence towards the EU average and our efforts to join the euro area, all with the aim of accelerating economic growth and thus increasing the growth of the GDP. In its report at the end of February this year, the European Commission confirmed Croatia's progress in implementing structural reforms. It also confirmed that Croatia no longer has excessive macroeconomic imbalances. In the first quarter of 2019, positive trends continued and Croatia's GDP grew at 3.9%. This is almost the highest rate recorded in the last 11 years. As a result of prudent fiscal policy and GDP growth, the general government debt share continued to decline. In the last 3 years, that is in the mandate of our government, it was reduced by almost 10 percentage points. In 2019, we expect the positive trend of public debt cuts to continue and fall to 71.6%. After the budget surplus in 2017 of 0.8%, Croatia had a budget surplus in 2018 again, this time of 0.2% of the GDP. Those of you who are following Croatia more closely and for a longer period of time will understand this is not a common event. The expectations for the surplus were more ambitious, but the government, I'm talking about the 2018, had to cover one-off costs related to financial guarantees issued by our predecessors to Croatian shipyards. The last recorded unemployment rate was 7%. It is half a percentage point lower than the average rate in the euro area. This is the new lowest level since Eurostat began to publish data for Croatia in 2000 and 10 percentage points less than 4 years ago. 2 out of the 3 leading credit rating agencies have put Croatia's rating back into the investment level. The European Commission's summer projections 2019 also recognized the acceleration of Croatia's economic growth by revising our economic growth forecast from 2.6% to 3.1%. This is more than double the economic growth of the whole of the European Union. Economic recovery, increase in exports, declining unemployment, persistent fiscal adjustment, and a strong decline of external debt significantly reduced the previous vulnerability of the Croatian economy. These are all indicators that within our almost now classical triangle of fiscal consolidation, structural reforms, and investments, here I mean both public and private, indeed brings results. In a nutshell, this means that we are spending more responsibly, investing more, and that we are becoming more efficient. We are proud of these achievements. However, a lot remains to be done. These results are positively perceived by the international community, and here I especially think of the financial community and the economic experts, and that is a source of motivation for us to continue with the implementation of the necessary reforms. Starting from the main objectives of the Croatian government program and taking into account the recommendations of the Council as well as the findings of the Commission, our economic policy of this year's national reform program relies on 3 goals. First one is strengthening the competitiveness of the economy. Second is linking education to the labor market. And third one is the sustainability of public finance. We will achieve these goals through the implementation of structural reforms in key areas. In public administration, through modernization and digitalization, and easier and faster administrative procedures. In the judiciary, through smart regulation and legal security and predictability. In the education system, through a thorough reform which will enable young generations to be more competitive, both at internal, European or global labor market. Another strategic goal of the Croatian government in the field of economic policy is the introduction of the euro as the official currency. We have devised, together with the Croatian National Bank, a strategy for the adoption of euro that has undergone a public debate from autumn 2017 till its adoption in May 2018. And in the pursuit of this goal, we intensified our activities in this past period, which resulted in significant progress. The most recent moves that we've made was sending a letter of intent to enter the European exchange rate mechanism to countries of the euro area, Denmark, and the EU institutions. We have prepared very well politically and diplomatically, and also through the work of the Minister of Finance and the Croatian Governor of the National Bank, that this letter of intent was positively received by the Eurogroup. It was exactly on the 8th of July. And this is our first step towards the ERM2, which of course precedes the introduction of the euro. We also achieved the remarkable progress in reducing macroeconomic imbalances, which allowed us to apply for the ERM. Our letter of intent was accompanied by a very solid and carefully drafted and crafted action plan of 6 areas and 19 policy measures which we believe that our sectorial ministries and the Croatian National Bank can deliver in the course of next 12 months. Our preparations for entry into the ERM2 and consequently the Eurozone are key elements that contributed to the overall key guidances of the Croatia's economic policy when it comes to the international institutions. Our membership of the Eurozone will place Croatia in the EU's narrowest circle of integration. It will symbolize our full integration and affirmation in Europe, together with the ambition to join the Schengen area, where we are also making a very thorough progress, expecting a concrete recommendation by the Commission, Juncker's Commission, to be admitted into the Schengen zone soon. The next big challenge for us is the presidency of the Council of the EU, a unique situation for our country, only 7 years into membership and already at the helm of the Council. That will be the first semester of 2020. We, as the youngest member, have prepared our priorities, and they will be composed as follows. First one is a balanced and sustainable economic growth, strengthening of the competitiveness and creation of quality jobs across the EU, connectivity and the digital transformation, the transition of the EU to the low-carbon circular economy, resistant to climate change, with particular emphasis on the conservation and sustainable management of waters, and on the issue of protection and preservation of the marine environment. Strong and reliable external border protection, which is also a prerequisite for free movement within the EU. Croatia is one of the countries on the so-called Western Balkans, Eastern Mediterranean route, pretty well understands what it means when the only land migratory route is active, given the experience we had in 2015 and 16. A comprehensive approach to migration with a special focus on completing the reform of the common European asylum system and also addressing negative demographic trends, especially when it comes to the emigration of young people. One of the key priorities will be to reach a quality agreement on the EU's multi-annual financial framework, the budget for 21-27. We will insist that the available funds continue to finance priority areas for the benefit of our citizens. For a newcomer, of course, we still require quite a lot of funding for the agricultural policy, rural development, cohesion, development of our region's security and education. But also we would like to tackle the new challenges that the EU is facing in the context of the post-Brexit EU as well as the context of the fourth industrial revolution. In economic and financial affairs, our activities will focus on promoting initiatives that encourage reform processes and convergence among member states. We will also focus on initiatives that strengthen the international economic and financial role of the European Union, including strengthening the international role of the euro and mitigating the negative fiscal effects of demographic trends. Our activities will also focus on the completion of the banking union and the capital market union. The Croatian presidency will be strongly committed to strengthening the capacity of customs services and the external border of the European Union in the area of the tax issues. We will also seek the possibility of improving the existing VAT system through work on current legislative proposals which are in the pipeline. As the topic of today's conference covers the issue of demography, I would like to tell you that in Croatia we are facing negative trends. Just an example, in 1950 Croatia had 100,000 newborns and 50,000 those who died. Recently we are facing a situation where on a yearly level we have around 37,000 newborns and a number of those who die is around 51,000. So the demographic challenge is the key issue for the survival of the Croatian nation. Let me give you some examples of what my government has done in order to tackle these issues which are challenging the Croatian society. We have started to raise the parental allowances in mid-2017. We increased them by 50% with an additional increase planned in mid-2020. Our goal is to increase them by a total of 110% in comparison to 2017. In the central government budget, we more than doubled the amount for parental allowances in the last 2 years. We have signed more than 200 contracts financed from the EU funds for building new kindergartens and improving working and living conditions within them. In 2017 and 18 alone, there were 5,300 subsidized housing loans for young couples. By the end of 2020, we expect that 20,000 families will have their new homes. Those measures, among others, achieved first results since some negative trends were changed. In 2018, there were 400 newborns more than in 2017. It's a small step forward, but still a little bit of changing the trends. We will prepare more ambitious demographic policy strategies and concrete measures, and they will also go in the direction of the last 6 months of parental leave to be delineated to full salary. We will enable homework from parents of young children and at least minimum of 10 days of paid leave for fathers. We are fully convinced that our efforts in reversing demographic trends will produce results and that positive demographic trends will emerge in the years which are ahead of us. We have recognized that the issue of demography is not only a national issue. We've looked at the comparative statistics, and I raised this issue at the EU summit in Sibiu in Romania, where the fact that actually half of the EU member states are facing negative natural growth. Half of the EU members have a similar or even worse problem than Croatia. That prompted us to insist and suggest that the EU strategic agenda, which was adopted now at the June European Council, entails the issue of the demographic challenges. So it was based on the Croatian amendment that the EU strategic agenda now for the first time has this issue as a task which is a pan-European task, a task where we clearly understand what are the national competencies and what are the EU competencies, but we feel that there should be a way found how the EU policy making as well as the EU budgetary resources should top up the efforts that we are doing at the national level. And I think this initiative has gathered a lot of support among many of the EU member states, as well as a lot of understanding within the Commission and the Council. This conference is an opportunity for all of us to discuss what are the challenges of the process of convergence, especially given that there are so many colleagues from Central and Eastern Europe here. We in Croatia have done a lot in terms of the absorption capacity of our institutions when it comes to the EU funds. When we started back in October 2016, we had 9% contracted EU funds in the national envelope. Now, 3 years later, even less than 3 years later, we are at a level of above 70%, which means 7.5 billion euros contracted in the mandate of our government. I will just mention a very unique event which I attended recently. That was the 1st of May conference organized by the Polish government, celebrating 15th anniversary of their membership in the EU, where all the prime ministers from the new 13 member states were present. And I told to Mateusz, I think you should have let the media be inside, because it would have been extremely important for the countries of Southeast Europe who are aspiring to become members to hear a very sober, with a reasonable time distance, analysis of the PMs of the Central and Eastern European countries. And the resume goes basically very simply. Before and after 2004, our countries have made such a big leap forward that previous 15 years compared to the post 15 years can be barely compared. And this advantage, where 365 billion euros were transferred to the countries of Central and Eastern Europe, signified symbolically and strongly what does the convergence mean for the concrete living standards and the economic standards of the citizens in the countries of Central and Eastern Europe. This point is critical for Croatia, because our buzzword is basically to speed up the catching up. If there is one motto that we have, this is what we are trying to do it as fast as possible. And I would be looking forward if some of your conclusions and the takeaways from today's conference will help us to navigate smarter and faster. Thank you very much, and enjoy your stay in Dubrovnik.